I'm a hair mineral analysis expert. I have a background in functional medicine, and I educate people using HTMA testing to maximize health, erase debilitating symptoms, and gain energy. I'm a multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, and I'm constantly searching for high-performance pros from all over the world to bring you this human optimization podcast. My name is Lisa Pitel-Killah. Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. And I'm so excited to introduce today Jim Hrncir. He is recognized as one of the pioneers of modern pharmaceutical compounding. Jim is responsible for the formulation of many bioidentical hormone, dermatological, nutritional, and anti-aging compounds, which are widely used across the United States. He has worked in radio and TV, including multiple appearances on Dr. Phil as a hormone expert. As a member of the board of the Alliance for Pharmacy Compounding, Jim is passionate about the benefits of pharmaceutical compounding and what it can bring to patients. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, glad to be here. And thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And, so many exciting innovative topics that we're going to talk about today that really can change the health of individuals. And we'll dig into a little bit about that customization. So give us some background, right, on what you've been doing and some of the things that have come to light, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I guess I've always wanted to take care of people. I'm a natural born caretaker. And so this is right up my alley to be able to help people with customized healthcare. And as a pharmacist, I go beyond just counting pills. I develop treatment plans for patients. I help them with nutrition. I help them with supplements, which I believe in the ethical use of supplements. Mm-hmm. And I also believe in balancing hormones for men and women, optimizing thyroid, reducing inflammation in the body through all sorts of methods, And so for me, I look at the entire picture and I look at root cause analysis of problems and then try to figure out, okay, root cause wise, how can we fix this patient?
Excellent. And, you mentioned a couple of key ones there. And that is, right, that hormone balance, but with regard as well to thyroid. And that can be a big problem and a big struggle for a lot of people, especially now when we have chronic stress, right? That overwhelming stress we're dealing with, and the adrenals are, right? We're starting to have that adrenal stress, and that can affect the thyroid too. So tell us a little bit more about the thyroid work.
It's interesting that most of my friends are traditional doctors. So this is no knock on traditional doctors because they're my buddies, but they have a belief system that they were trained to believe. Yeah. And so when you start seeing patients the way that I see them, saying, you know what, I'm not going to be constricted to just what the drug companies tell me. I'm going to say, what is best for a patient? What's most natural for a patient? What makes a patient feel better, improve their quality of life? And so therefore, I start looking at broader parameters for thyroid. And so, for instance, free T3 or T3 is the active form of thyroid hormone, but most doctors don't even test for T3. Matter of fact, they test for T4 because there's a drug, Synthroid, and they're taught to use that drug, and it's all they need. They're also taught to test TSH, which is a level of a communication hormone from the brain to the thyroid gland. And it's not an accurate indicator of thyroid function. It is not an accurate indicator. But doctors are taught in school that TSH is all that in a bag of chips. And it isn't. Right. It's just a marker. It just tells us ballpark how your thyroid levels are doing in your body, but it doesn't tell you what base you're on. When we look at T3 levels, it actually tells us what base we're on. And then we look at reverse T3 because patients under stress, which we're out there fighting the saber-tooth tiger every day.
It's true. It's so true.
We never go back to the cave and relax with cave woman or caveman. Yep. We just keep on fighting that saber-tooth tiger 24/7. And that is stressful to the body. It causes all kinds of disruptions endocrine wise, if we want to talk about endocrinology here. And so for thyroid, it's no different. And so anyway, we know that it's going to play a role. And one of the ways is that the body will convert T4, which is precursor thyroid, into reverse T3, which is blocking thyroid. It blocks your metabolism. And I don't know about you, but I don't want my metabolism blocked, at 66, I need all the energy I can get, Yeah. And so anyway, I'm a big fan of optimizing all of those levels, making sure that they're all in line, making sure that they don't have Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroiditis, which is very much underdiagnosed. And it's the most common autoimmune disease in America. But most of my doctors say, well, Jim, why would I test for it? I can't do anything about it. And I said, well, you can't, but I can. I've reversed autoimmune thyroiditis in a lot of patients. It's not that hard to do. And when we reduce autoimmune thyroiditis, we also reduce resistance in the body to thyroid hormone. We allow the thyroid gland to become less inflamed so that it can start producing more of its own thyroid, which is really the goal. Let's let our body fix itself. Let's remove obstacles to health and let the body fix itself.
Yeah. And that incredible analysis and the way that you're looking at that, because it's so true. Our bodies constantly want to heal themselves. Sometimes they just need a little more support rather than some of the therapies that's going to completely replace those things. So that's really interesting. And you're right. It is such an underdiagnosed issue. People don't even realize that they have it because they're not testing for that full thyroid panel that you were talking about. Right. And that's really important for people to understand. And so let's talk about hormones too, just with regards to age. There's a lot of differences between men, women, what age where we are in life. There's so many things that we can be dealing with at that point.
Well, let's talk about women first, okay? And so a lot of women are premenopausal and they go, well, I don't need to worry about hormones because, I've still got hormones. The problem is that by age 30 to 35, women are losing progesterone levels very, very rapidly. The levels are falling tremendously fast. And by age 40, a woman has lost 80% of her progesterone and she's lost about 20% of her estrogen. So her estrogen is chugging along just fine. So she still feels like a girl, and estrogen is that hormone that helps you with clear brain and it gives you energy and it helps you sleep better and it helps with libido and it helps with bones and heart and brain, so we love estrogen, but we also love progesterone. And when progesterone starts dropping, women become estrogen dominant. They start having PMS, and that PMS is no fun for the people around them, nor for them living in their own skin.
Exactly.
But Lisa, the bad thing is that yes, that's a symptom. PMS is a symptom where they don't feel like themselves for a few days each month. But what about what it's doing inside? I mean, in other words, they're much more prone to when progesterone levels drop, it can increase the risk of breast cancer. It can increase the risk of fibroid tumors, which is the reason most women have to have a hysterectomy. Yeah. So, and I can go on and on with female problems, and progesterone estrogen balance is a big key factor. And I also look at testosterone because testosterone is an important hormone for females. And I see testosterone levels dropping. I have 20-year-olds, 25-year-old women who have low testosterone already, stress, I can tell you. Yeah. And so, and we sometimes need to supplement with a testosterone supplement or with a progesterone supplement, not enough to make them into a man. There's all kinds, but women need a certain level. Just like I know that you love to work out, and women's workouts, when your testosterone, your progesterone, your estrogen are optimized, you're going to have a better workout. You're going to have better muscle retention. You're going to feel more energetic. Your metabolism is going to be better. And so it is all about optimizing, your quality of life and also health. Yeah. But on the menopausal women, there's so many myths about that. Most women have a feeling because they heard it on TV about a big study back in 2002 that if you use hormones, you're going to get breast cancer. Invasive breast cancer is what they said. Yeah. Well, it turns out that study has been 100%. It was the biggest study ever done on hormones, by the way. And that study has been 100% disproved by the actual researchers of the study. They came forward and they said, we made a big mistake. Wow. And they said women do not have increased risk of breast cancer if they use hormones. They have a 20% reduced risk of breast cancer over women who do nothing. So women who are doing nothing have higher risks than women who are using hormones. Now that is just, our brain has just been so conditioned to say, oh, hormones, breast cancer, hormones, breast cancer. And the reality is that at the last breast cancer conference in San Antonio, It's the largest breast cancer conference in the world. They said that women who had breast cancer and go back on hormones have a reduced risk of recurrence.
Wow.
Now think about a woman who's never had breast cancer. And she's got a reduced risk if she's using the hormones. And even if you've had breast cancer, a reduced risk of recurrence. So this ought to alleviate that fear and allow women to say, you know what, I know that the hormones are probably going to protect my heart. They're going to decrease risk of cardiovascular disease by as much as 50%,
Wow.
50%,
Yeah.
because cardiovascular disease is the number one killer of women. 400,000 women a year die of heart disease needlessly. I mean, the hormones can help that. And then also they have lower risk of all kinds of other things like dementia, 78% decreased risk of dementia if they use bioidentical hormones. And that just came out of the University of Arizona Medical School. And they looked at a lot of women, several 100,000 women, and found out that there was a reduced risk of dementia. I don't know about you, but I'm almost more scared of losing my dementia than I am of like losing use of my limbs. I mean, I just want to be able to think and to enjoy life, at least in my brain.
Yep. I could agree 100%. I would definitely miss my workouts, but
Yeah.
but I'm definitely on board with that for sure.
And then there's, Lisa, I love the being able to help men with hormone balance, because we have estrogen, we have two estrogens, we have testosterone, we have DHEA, we have pregnenolone, we have all these different hormones in us, DHT, dihydrotestosterone, and it's all about balancing those hormones to an optimal level, but not going overboard.
Right.
And I see a lot of men who come in and I test them and they are not even measurable. They're so high because they said, well, Jim, if a little does a little good, I thought a lot does a lot of good, and that's not true. It increased risks if you use too much. And I see a lot of doctors going overboard, unknowingly, they're not trying to harm somebody. Most of my doctors want to do the right thing. Okay. Yeah. But they're going overboard. They haven't had the specialized training that I've had to understand what represents optimization. And so I look at both estradiol and estrone on men. I also look at testosterone. I look at DHT sometimes. And I'm looking at precursors like DHEA, sulfate, just to see how they're doing. So I'm looking at men in a balanced fashion to make sure that they have optimal hormones without having too much. Now, the one thing I see a lot of is young guys want to get big, right? You've seen it in the gym, haven't you?
Of course.
You've seen the guys that are roided up, I mean, and unfortunately, I see those guys when they get to be in their 40s and they have no testicles left. They have no ability to maintain fertility. They have no ability to maintain their musculature unless they're continuing to roid up. And I feel bad about those guys because they were young and crazy, and I was young and crazy, and I know I totally know how they think and feel. And so if you decide to start hormones early, just know that you're probably committing the rest of your life to being on hormones. You're probably going to affect your fertility, and you may even affect your health. So I don't see many of my bodybuilders living very long. The guys who stay in great shape, love it. But the guys who get, who are competing in the giant, I worry about those guys. I've had a lot of friends in that, and I've lost several of them.
Wow.
So I got to experience a loss firsthand among those guys, and they're good guys, and and they just got into that sport a little too hard. And so anyway, I'm just hoping that you understand with eyes wide open when you go into that, make sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I feel like as well, in a lot of cases, especially, because women, we have that huge change, right? We have that decade of premenopausal and then menopausal, we have that big change. But I feel like men sometimes are kind of left out in the dark because they don't really have that big change, but they still have changes. And I feel like sometimes they're missed, and that's why they really, don't feel as well or as optimized as they should.
And I can speak from that firsthand because I work really hard. And I like working. I mean, matter of fact, at 66, I see myself working for at least another 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I like working. I like helping people. So I
Mhm.
don't want to stop working, you
Yeah.
know? But I also know that it takes a toll on me because my hormone levels started dropping earlier than they probably should have, you know?
Yeah.
And so I remember I was about mid 50s when I finally started using testosterone.
Mhm.
And being, you know, in a pretty stress-filled environment, I noticed that the stress drives hormones down. It does in women, it does in men. I had a buddy of mine who was a vice president of American Airlines, very stressful position. And he, at 60, when he retired, his testosterone was 400. A year later, his testosterone had jumped up to 1100 by simply getting out of the stress environment.
Wow,
Because
that's
all
incredible.
this feedback to the brain, there's an area in the brain called the hypothalamus, and it senses stress. It senses cortisol levels, which are put out by stress. And that causes a shutdown of the ability of the hypothalamus to regulate the glands like the testes and the ovaries and things like that. So yeah, stress plays a huge role, Lisa. You are totally right in that. And so on me, I thought, am I going to quit working, or am I going to keep on working? I said, I'm going to keep on working. So I made the decision to use hormones,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
to optimize. And I think, you know, it's interesting. People don't realize that hormones are more than just sex hormones. They're not
Mhm.
just for guys, boom, boom in the bedroom. They're not just for girls, you know, to have breasts and uterine linings, and all that kind of stuff. And fertility hormones are anti-inflammatory. And matter of fact, I developed protocols for veterans with traumatic brain injury and PTSD. And so, matter of fact, I'm meeting with a veteran right after this podcast, who had significant injuries, and we're going to help get his brain back in shape. And one of the things we do is we give hormones because their brains have been rattled around just like stress would do, and
Mhm.
they can't. This young man is in his early 30s, and he has a testosterone of an 80-year-old, you know, and
Wow.
not through any fault of his own. I mean, it was a blast, you know, he was
Mhm.
blown up. And so we're going to help him. I help a lot of veterans, and I love doing it, you know. And when we get the hormones on board, their brain clears up, you know, it calms down. Their depression lifts. They feel, a lot of them have suicide ideation, which I feel just horrible about, because we lose way too many veterans, and they start losing that. They start feeling more a part of their families, you know, and friends. I mean, it is just
Yeah.
a beautiful thing to see, you know, and hormones are a big part of that.
Yeah. Wow. And I mean, to be able to help people in that, the way that you're doing it in that fashion is just incredible. Right. And I can understand why you want to work for another decade because it's such powerful work. I think that's amazing. So yeah, so, you know, bias sometimes against compounding pharmacies, which could limit the options available to doctors for their actual patients. Let's touch on that.
Yeah. Um, what you don't want to do is you don't want to go to your doctor and demand that they give you bioidentical hormones, or, you know, or that they optimize your hormones. That's not fair. Okay. And again, most of my friends are doctors, and they're traditional doctors. And so I'm defending them a little bit here.
Yeah.
You know, that's like going to a gynecologist and say, you know, doc, I got this knee problem. You know, can you help me out? I think I sprained it in the gym. I don't know if I need to get surgery on it or not. You know, that's not his job, you know? And so to go to your traditional MD, and he has no interest in this, it's out of his wheelhouse, and asking him to do something like that is like asking your gynecologist to help your knee. Okay. So have realistic expectations. Go to an integrative medicine doctor that knows what he's doing in this, or a doctor who has just dabbles in functional medicine. They have a foot in traditional medicine and in natural medicine. You know, you can call it functional medicine, integrative medicine, but maybe they have a foot in both, and those guys can help you. And or you can work with a compounding pharmacist, and I know they have them in both Canada. Yeah, that's where you are,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And here in the United States,
Yeah.
I have several Canadian friends who are great compounding pharmacists, and they are clinically as advanced as me. And these guys can actually help the patient find a doctor that is going to help them with that. It's just like a specialist. Okay. You go to an oncologist for cancer, you go to a heart doctor, cardiologist for heart. You've got to go to the right doctor. So don't be disappointed if your doctor says, that's just not something that's in my wheelhouse.
Right. Yeah. And ask the right questions. Right?
Absolutely.
Because they may have someone that they know or that they can refer to at that point if there's something specific that you're looking for.
For instance, whenever I'm working up a patient, I have them fill out, I have an electronic secure questionnaire. They fill it out, and I now know enough about them, and then I order labs for them. I usually use serum labs. I have used urine labs. I don't use saliva testing. I don't have confidence in the I guess the results.
Okay.
I haven't seen it help my patients as much. I know some people who use saliva testing with success. I just haven't had that. So, and most of my doctors like to have serum testing because it matches their belief system.
Right.
So I do serum testing. I look at the hormones on a premenopausal woman. I would look at your hormones on day 19 of your cycle. That's whenever estrogen and progesterone both have nice peaks of the nicest levels you're going to have in the month. And so, especially a progesterone. So I say when you're premenopausal, check on day 19 of your cycle. For women who are menopausal, it doesn't make a difference. Just do it in the morning. If you're on hormones, do it in the morning before you use your hormones.
Yeah.
Okay. And before you take your thyroid.
Yes.
And then also if you're on thyroid, and then for men, if you're on hormones, make sure that you test before you put your hormones on that morning. We want to see what your 24-hour steady state level is, and then we can get a good look, and also ask those your compounding pharmacist, ask your doctor to say, do you know what labs to run? Because I'm happy to help if someone just says, Jim, what labs do I run? I'm happy to send you a list. Okay. If you want to distribute it, but basically there are certain panels that you want to run in order to make sure that you get the information that you need to make good decisions about your case.
Yeah, excellent. And interesting. And so I want to ask you a question here with regards to hormones in general. So, our body, especially thyroid, our body is, so a lot of people will take thyroid only in the morning, right? And our body's meant to have be releasing thyroid all day in cycles, right? And so there's been a lot of old research that has now come back to the surface about taking thyroid hormone twice a day rather than once a day, every 12 hours. Do you use any type of that practice, or is that something that you think about either at this point?
If you look at, T3 is the fastest acting of the two thyroids. There's T4, which is storage thyroid. There's T3, which is active form of thyroid hormone. What people don't realize is that T3 has a very fast onset of action. Like if you take it within an hour, you can tell you've taken it. I mean, because I just did my eyes big because you go zoop.
Like bing, I'm awake.
But T3 has a 2.5 day half-life. Now that is something people don't realize. It has a much longer half-life. In other words, it's floating around your system a lot longer than you realize it is. And so that surprises people. Now, I'll tell you what I do is if I have a person who I give let's just say I give an Armour thyroid or a Nature thyroid, one of those that's desiccated thyroid. It has T4, T3, plus some other T1s, T2s. It has calcitonin, it has selenium, it has all kinds of good stuff in there. And that's pig thyroid, by the way, but pig thyroid and human thyroid are identical. Just FYI, they're identical. And so they take this desiccated thyroid, and some people about 1 to 2 hours later get palpitations. In other words, it hits their system so hard that their heart rate speeds up. You get tachycardia, fast heart rate, and you get palpitations where you feel like your chest is beating. Yeah. And for those people, number one, I look at their iron levels because I want to see they may be slightly anemic, and the thyroid is causing their body tissues use more oxygen. Metabolism goes up, therefore their heart has to beat harder and they get faster heartbeat. The other thing is that some people are just cardio aware. They're sensitive to their heartbeat. So therefore I put it in a slow release capsule. Matter of fact, at least I did that for my wife. We couldn't give her enough of the immediate release desiccated thyroid to make her better. So I invented a slow release form of thyroid, and I gave that to her, and we were able to get her dosage up to the optimal level.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I think that's important for people to know too, because I feel like a lot of people maybe don't realize what effect it has, what that half-life is, right? How fast that onset can actually be, and that there are options if something's not
And
working.
every now and then I have people who come in, they're on T4, Synthroid, and they're converting to T3 very nicely, and I don't change them. Okay. I never say that everybody has to be, one size fits all, as you said earlier. I do not believe in one size fits all. I believe in what works for that patient, but the majority of my patients do best on the desiccated thyroid. Not all of them, but the most of them, probably about 80%,
Yeah. Yeah. And so one size fits all. I want to get to that because that's a big part of the way that you custom tailor treatments for your patients. And I think that is so important because we are all bio-individual, right? We're all different. Even if we have the same symptoms, it could be a different underlying root cause and different treatment plans. So tell us a little bit about that.
I look at each individual and I say, first of all, I try to figure out what's going on with them, because symptoms tell us they're clues, clinical clues. So I look at symptoms. I look at their medical history. I look at their family history. I look at their symptoms most profoundly, and I go, okay. They may have been diagnosed with something, but traditional medicine is big about diagnosing, but they're not big about treating,
Oh, yes.
and so anyway, they don't sometimes just don't know that we can fix things, if we, like, for instance, most of my patients with high cholesterol, that's a symptom of insulin glucose imbalance. And all I have to do is fix insulin glucose imbalance. And all of a sudden the high cholesterol goes away. High triglycerides drop like a rock. And so it's not that hard to do when you know the root cause, but you got to understand root cause. The root cause is not a statin deficiency where they need to take statins.
Right.
Now I did have one patient, and he did everything right. He exercised like a fiend. He was built perfectly. I mean, he did everything right, ate exactly like I told him, and his cholesterol did not drop, it rose. He had genetic problem. And you know what? He's one in 1,000.
Yeah.
I mean, and so, but it can happen.
Yeah.
So I look at each individual as an individual. I said, you know what? You are one that really does need a statin, and I hardly ever recommend that, And so anyway, I want to let you know that you got to look at each individual. You can't just say one size fits all. If you took me to your gym, you would not make me do the exact same exercise that you do because that I'm different biologically. So the same thing with treatment plans. When I'm developing a treatment plan, I use ethical supplements. I use good nutrition plan, an anti-inflammatory eating style. And also, of course, I'm going to look at hormones and thyroid optimization. I'm going to use tools within my integrative tool chest in order to get these people better.
Excellent. And you mentioned something there, and we'll finish off with this because I want to give people something to think about. And, we talked a little bit about stress. And I feel like stress is a causal factor for so many health issues, right? And symptoms that we come across. A lot of that stress can be driving inflammation. And you mentioned eating, in an appropriate fashion for having an anti-inflammatory foods in your diet. So what would be your, say, top 3 anti-inflammatory foods that someone could implement into their, or 3 inflammatory foods that people are eating too often that they should be thinking about taking out?
The first thing that I do, and this is going to be shocking to a lot of people, is I remove grains. Grains are inflammatory to 100% of people who eat them, not just people who are gluten sensitive. Yes, of course, that's horrible for people who are gluten sensitive.
Yeah.
Wheat, rye, and barley have gluten in them. But what about rice? What about oats and corn? These are inflammatory grains. They have lectins in them that are very inflammatory to the gut. When the gut's inflamed, your body's inflamed.
Right.
And 85% of people who have an inflamed gut do not even know they have an inflamed gut. But when they did a study at Cleveland Clinic, which is a very well-known clinic, is right up near you, and Cleveland Clinic, they did a study, and 100% of the people who ate grains had inflammatory markers rise. So just to let you know that yes, grains have B complex, and yes, we love them because I don't have stupid on my forehead. I love bread, I love tortilla chips, but I just don't buy them.
Right.
And I just choose to limit those out of my diet. So that's one of the first things I do. And also, grains are very high glycemic index. In other words, they're going to drive a lot of insulin in your body, and insulin is the cause of insulin resistance. When you drive up too much insulin, your body starts learning how to ignore insulin. Therefore, sugar floats around your bloodstream, and your blood sugar levels start rising. And you start gaining weight around the middle. Your blood pressure starts going up. You start developing atherosclerosis. You get a heart attack and a stroke, and you die. And that's called metabolic syndrome. It's the number one health problem in America and in Canada. It's the reason that we lose most people in these countries. And it's all because we choose to eat foods that are high glycemic index, and so I try to limit those starchy vegetables. I try to limit those out. And of course, grains we talked about. And then there's a few people who are very inflammatory. And I also try to take nightshades out of their diets.
Yes.
The nightshades are inflammatory to some people. And so anyway, and the nightshade, that means potatoes and tomatoes and peppers and things like that, things that we love, of course. I don't eat potatoes, unfortunately, or high glycemic index starch, but the peppers and tomatoes. Now, I can give you a little hint. Italians 1,000 years ago figured out that if you take the seeds out of tomatoes, they're not inflammatory.
Yes. And they cook them all the time too,
Yes.
Right? Which helps break that down too.
So,
Yes.
So anyway, just FYI, that the Italians figured it out a long time ago.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
well,
anyway,
some
the only
great,
thing I wanted to say, Lisa, is I would give an appeal to your listeners that customized medicine is under assault by traditional medicine, as you know, and I know. The good old boys in traditional medicine, including the FDA, do not want us around, because they don't control us, and they hate that. And so the FDA is in the process of trying to shut down patient access to compounded biological hormones. And if they shut it down in the United States, they'll also shut it down in Canada, because you know how they follow each other.
Yeah.
And so I'm really worried about that, because bioidentical hormones represent a significant protection over traditional hormones. Traditional hormones are not that bad, but bioidentical hormones are about 20% safer in a few areas, a few categories that I could espouse, but we don't have time. So I just want to make sure that we maintain patient access to choice, because some patients may choose not to use integrated medicine and bioidentical hormones, and that's okay. But what about the patients who do choose?
Right.
We have 8 million Americans using bioidentical hormones right now. And that means 8 million Americans would be wiped out from using their hormones. So there is a website, compounding.com. If you go there, just if you've ever had good experience with integrated medicine or compounded hormones, just tell your quick story there, because we're sending this out to the lawmakers, the policymakers. We're trying to make sure that the FDA and some of the other entities do not shut us down.
Okay, so compounding.com to share those stories and support patient choice, basically. And you're right, integrative medicine has so much to offer, built off new research, even resurfacing old research that may come back to the surface, and then more research added. So it's important that we have and have access to those choices for our health and have the options. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that. That was very enlightening. And I think that people are definitely going to start thinking about aging a little bit differently. And that's really kind of what my goal is that, we are all bio-individual. And I think the one comment that I hear quite often as I get into I'll be in my 50s in a year, as we get to that age, people are like, well, I'm just getting older. And that comment breaks my heart, because that is so untrue. There are so many things left to accomplish at whatever age you are. And you definitely can do them if you're taking care of yourself in the right fashion.
I had a traditional doctor who took my class to learn how to do hormones and thyroid integrated medicine. And he's a traditional gynecologist. And at the end of it, he goes, Jim, I am sick to my stomach. And I said, did I feed you too much information, doc? Because I just spouted solid for a day and a half, in this class. And he said, no, Jim, it was great. He said, what I'm sick about is that I'm one of those doctors who've been patting my female patient on the back, and I've been telling them, oh, honey, you're just getting older. Oh, honey, it's in your head. He said, I realized I could do something. I didn't know I could do this stuff. I didn't know it. And, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go home and I'm going to treat my very first patient, which is going to be my wife.
Yeah. Amazing.
So just, you don't know what you don't know.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So hopefully this will stem some more research on the aspect of our listeners and what they're looking for and how they want to feel. So thank you again for your time today, Jim. It was so great to have you on the show, and I hope you enjoyed yourself too.
Oh, had a great time. Are you kidding?
Excellent. Excellent. It's always great to share information. All right.
Okay.
So thanks for joining us, everyone. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. There's a brand new episode every 2 weeks. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast host, give this episode a like, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to today's show. Head over to Pitel-Killah.com to gain access to some amazing free resources that will help you gain energy, erase debilitating symptoms, and be the best version of you. Remember to give this podcast a like and follow me on social media at Pitel-Killah. I'm here every 2 weeks with a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. Until next time.